everybody, welcome to the March Q&A. I've got a bunch of questions I want to get into answering, but first I want to ask a question, get some input from all of you. Within the next year, I'm going to be doing some traveling. I'm going to be hitting a lot of conventions for reasons that I'll be able to talk about in the future, but I want to get your input on where you would want me to travel to, where you'd like me to visit, what conventions do you frequent, and what conventions would you like me to be a part of. So please in the comments below, answer that question. And without further ado, let's get into answering some questions from the Q&A here. So let's see. This is from, I'm going to try to, in the past I haven't been really good about including people's names that have been asking the questions. So I'm going to try to be better this time. I've actually been keeping in track of people's names, and I'll mention their names and answer their questions. Okay, here we go. So starting with the man with the yellow heart underwear. Question is, do you have a favorite thing you like to draw? I like to draw dinosaurs. I also like to draw dinosaurs. Besides that, I really like drawing faces. I don't know why it is, but I love faces and expression. All right, this one is from Mondesir. Hi Brandon, your videos always give me valuable insight. I'm a self-taught artist. I used to love learning about new art techniques and applying them to my creative playbook, but as of lately I've been losing my desire to draw. I don't think I'm having a creative block. I still have so many new ideas running through my mind, but what do you do when you have no inspiration? What do you do when you lose the will to draw? Sorry if you see this question pop up in your other social contacts. I just really wanted to get your opinion. Thanks. Okay, this one is a tough one because at different times in my life I might have answered this in a different way. It really depends on what you are trying to accomplish with your art at this phase in your life. If you are trying to learn and trying to grow as an artist, if you are maybe a little bit younger, it may be the best thing for you to continue to focus on trying to draw even when you don't feel like it. I think that's a really important skill to learn. And I've had many, many moments throughout my career where I didn't want to draw, where I had been doing so much that I was just kind of burned out, where I kind of just kept drawing because I had to, because that was my job. And in a lot of those moments, I would think like, oh, my work's not going to be very good because I don't really want to do it. But then looking back, I thought like, wow, this stuff's actually pretty good. I was able to create stuff I was proud of, even though I wasn't really into it. So part of just being a professional means that you have to do some stuff sometimes when you don't want to do it. And especially when you're in the phase when you're trying to grow as an artist and learn, that's definitely going to be the case. Now, that being said, I've also had other periods of my life, more recently, in fact, kind of when I quit working professionally, for the larger studios, where I was so burned out that I really didn't want to do any art. And that was something I struggled with quite a while. And I found in that case, because of the point in my life I was at where I'd already done so much work, because it was a little bit more of a serious psychological situation where I was having this professional burnout, it really worked for me to take some time off from creating art. I stopped drawing for a while, and then just one day it was maybe just the period of only a couple of months that I stopped. But one day I was reading another artist's blog and reading some tutorials, and I suddenly regained my desire to draw, and I've been kind of sketching steadily ever since then. So it's like many of the things I discuss, it depends, it's kind of complicated. I think in general, I would try to work through it, try to still do art even when you don't feel like it, and kind of learn what that to learn what that feels like. But there may be certain cases where you do need to take a break, and you got to kind of judge that for yourself. Okay, this is from Kong Drawmore. Do you have any recommended resources specific for making comics and how to actually start making comics? I think what I probably should do is I should do another video that has resources just on kind of comic books. But one thing you may want to look at, I do have a video that's about my recommended art books, the art books I like. Another fantastic resource It's a podcast. It's now discontinued. It was a collaboration by my good friend Jersey Drozd and Mark Rudolph called Art and Story. They did a wonderful series called Your Comic from the Ground Up. So you can go back and listen to that. And that's a really good nuts and bolts description of how to make a comic. Okay, the next one is from Junatin C. What are some practices or training routines you do to maintain your level of art? I find that after not practicing my fundamentals, I tend to lose my strength in certain areas, sort of like a muscle not being worked out. This is absolutely true. I find that this is true for me, that I need a warm-up to start drawing, and I need to draw regularly to keep my skills up. And I usually have to, if I've gone a while without drawing, I have to kind of get in the sketchbook and get back warmed up again. As far as like particular exercises, I did a video a while back called The First Thing You Should Learn to Draw. I will link it here. One of the best things I like to do to warm up is just to draw primitives. So that's things like I'll start with lines and ellipses and then start building cubes and cylinders out of those and then build more complex shapes out of those. I think gesture drawing and doing some observational drawing, like drawing portraits, doing some more construction figure drawing are also good ways to warm up. And I find doing those sorts of exercises kind of helps my brain get ready to do the two things that it needs to do as an artist. One, to think abstractly about shapes and shapes in 3 dimensions, and the other one to observe, and to observe in the right way and observe carefully, and also to interpret that observation in a way that can be useful to the drawing that I do. So those are some of the warm-ups I do. I try to just in general just sketch and try to sketch regularly and try to sketch stuff that I like. So that kind of gets back to the enjoying drawing. Focus on drawing stuff that you like to do, and that's probably the best way to keep your skills up. I would really like to hear your take on believing in yourself and the project you're working on. If you're working on a big Pixar movie, everyone around you is going to be really impressed. But if you're working on your own dinky little comics, dinky, others often view it as a hobby project or unlikely to become successful. With limited support from the outside, you can easily wind up losing faith in what you're striving towards. Success looks very different for Pixar, which needs millions of ticket sales to break even, than an indie comic artist who just needs to support themselves and their family. This is definitely a difficult problem to deal with. When I left Disney and started just working by myself, working on my comic, the isolation had a very intense effect on me as far as an artist. It's very difficult to stay motivated and to feel purposeful when the thing you're doing is kind of floating out in the ether and not really connected to anything. And it's not just about getting feedback from your work, but it's feeling that you are doing something meaningful. There's this idea of social proof, that we know something is valuable by the amount of people that are engaged with it or interested in it. And I think that applies to our work as well. As human beings, we have a need to feel validated by our community with what we are doing. So even if you aren't working on a big Pixar scale project and you don't have, these millions of fans, whatever you are doing, you need to find a way to engage with other people with what you are doing. Even if it's a small audience that follows your work, even if it's family and friends, it's going to be much harder for you to find meaning and to be motivated in your dinky little project if it really is just your project. Art is not really art until it's shared, until it becomes a discussion between more than one person. And you will find a different motivation and a different pride in what you are doing as soon as you start sharing with people, as soon as you start getting the respect and I'm not going to say admiration, but just say the respect of your peers. If you can create work that you can be proud of, I think being part of a community and being connected with your work and connecting with other people is very important to getting that sense of meaning that can drive you forward. Okay. This is from Meow. I would love to hear your take on portfolio advice. It's a very tricky topic, and all advice on that topic would be wonderful. So I think I might actually do a longer form video on this. Murao continues to say, I'm interested in both concept art for the entertainment industry and illustrative freelance work, so something along those lines would be very helpful. Yeah, I think I'm going to take a deeper dive on this. I kind of had an answer for this, but I think there could be a lot here. So maybe look forward to a future video where I talk about this in a little more detail. All right, here we go. This is another one that I think I'm going to address in more detail. This is from Van Illustration, asking about feedback. I think this is a really great question about how feedback affects your work. How do you do feedback? And this does kind of relate to Queer Tales' question about motivation and feedback and things like that. I'm going to take more time with that. So, but another one from Van Illustration. You've touched on this in the past, but I'm still curious. How has being a father affected your artwork? Has it affected the message in your writing, your overall drive, or your general workflow? Any advice for other father artists aspiring to write their own comic book, or perhaps I'll interject, maybe other comic book artists that are aspiring fathers? Thank you, sir. I always look forward to your videos, sketches, and comics. Thank you, Van Illustration. You've been very supportive of my work, and I really appreciate all your questions and comments, and just you know, keeping me going by your support. So yeah, this is a really interesting question. This is something that's been on my mind ever since my wife and I decided to have our first child. There was maybe this thought in the back of my mind. I've always been a little bit of a goof off. I don't know if you've caught that theme listening to or watching this YouTube channel, but I've always had issues with motivation, staying on task, responsibility, finishing things. I always got bad grades in school. I'm a very forgetful person. So there's always this question on my mind of, like, when I was younger, oh, when I have a kid, is that going to be the thing that's going to motivate me? It's finally going to, I'm going to have purpose. I'm going to be like Homer Simpson putting up pictures of Maggie on his wall that keeps him working at the nuclear power plant. And I found for myself that that's not the case. It's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, having a child is going to derail you, because having a child is a lot of work and it's very stressful. So do not have a child because you think it's somehow either going to make you more motivated, or you think it's going to maybe repair your relationship. That's the worst reason to have a child. You actually kind of need to plan to be derailed a little bit and to have your focus taken away. So if your focus is really about growing as an artist, you should think carefully about having a child, or really any big life change. So that being said, being a father has absolutely affected my art, how I think about my art, and the type of stories that I want to tell as an artist. One of the biggest insights on being a father that I've had in the last several years is just this feeling that, you know, as I'm struggling to kind of make it as an independent artist, I'm not making very much money doing it. But one of the things that really keeps me going and pushes me and satisfies me is the idea of leaving a legacy for my children and creating work that they can be proud of. Even if I can't make a lot of money from doing this work, I really like the idea that I can make something that I can be proud of and that I know is going to be part of my children's heritage and my children's children's heritage, that they can look back and say, this is who our father or our grandfather was, and hopefully that will mean something for them. Hopefully they can take some sort of lesson out of that, and hopefully that will drive them forward. So I find a lot of purpose in my work now as a father, not in the sense that I'm necessarily supporting my children doing this work, but that I can kind of be an example to them. And one of the reasons why that is important to me, and I believe it will be important to them, is because my mother passed away, let's see now, is it 7 years ago, I think, roughly. And I found that, of course, you go through the process of grieving when you lose a loved one, but there is also this point you get to in that process of remembering someone where that memory has to be a positive for you. You can't keep having someone's death being negative for you. And so I had to refocus on what things I could learn from my mother's life. What example had she set for me? What could that tell me about the type of person that I was? And I found a lot of meaning and a lot of peace in looking at her life and taking pride in the life she had lived and the legacy she had left me. And it also affects how I see now my father, who, he's going to be around for quite a while, I'm sure, but I can look at him and start thinking about those lessons and actually have the chance to thank him for those things and talk about those things while we're still together. So that's a great question. Definitely gets into more sensitive areas, but I think there absolutely is an important role that art can play in the life of a father. And the last thing I would say is that art can be a very powerful way to communicate your love for someone else. And so some of the art that I'm most proud of is art that you'll never see because it was made to express something to someone I loved. The better you get as an artist, the better you're able to do that, and the more power you have to do that. So there can really be a connection between art and being able to express your love and express the things that are matter to you. And I wouldn't worry too much about being good at what you do to be able to express your love. I mean, even just something done imperfectly, done sincerely. I have my other video about punk rock art and how important that is, and you can still make a meaningful expression without having perfect skills. So hopefully that's an interesting answer to your question. Yeah, go be a father, be an awesome father, be an awesome artist. No reason why you can't be both. Let's see. Oh, I missed part of the question here about workflow and advice for father artists aspiring to write their own comic book. Yeah, the other part of it is just time management. You got to figure out how you're going to do what you want to do. I really feel for any of you guys that have a family and have a full-time job that you have to support your kids. That's going to be a tough challenge, and you just got to accept that's going to be a tough challenge that may limit what you do. You shouldn't feel bad about not being amazing at being an artist if you're also working hard at being a good father and being a provider. Okay, Amarique Honore. Hey Brandon, I was very glad to see your last vid and wish you all the best for 2018. You too, thank you. I have a question. I need a good advice, please. I'm an amateur traditional drawer, older than you. Are you sure? I've been struggling like hell for the last 2 months with my new Wacom Intuos Pro. Couldn't afford a Cintiq. That's not unusual. They're pretty pricey. Even if I practice the hard way almost every day, like Stakhanov. Actually, is Stakhanov? Yeah, I had to look that up. Awesome reference. I find the results pretty mediocre. Compared with what I can do with a pen. What would you advise me to do? Thanks in advance, and I hope to watch your video soon, etc., etc. So you should never feel frustrated with anything you're trying to learn in art, and most skills actually. You should never feel frustrated by not seeing results after 2 months. Some things with art are very tough, and the truth is that using a tablet is a really weird interface to get used to, and some people honestly never really adjust to it. If I have my choice, I would actually prefer not to use a tablet because the disconnect is kind of odd, but it may just take you a little while longer. It may just take you a little while longer to adjust and get comfortable with using that interface. One video I'm kind of interested in doing at some point is talking about the differences between a Cintiq and a tablet and working on paper. All those different interfaces all have kind of benefits and kind of liabilities, and I wouldn't blame anyone for kind of not wanting to work with a tablet. But I've known different artists that really use different interfaces for different types of work that they like to do. It's actually not uncommon for some artists to prefer doing some types of work on a tablet, other types of work on a Cintiq, and other types of work on pen and paper. I think that's certainly the case for me. One of the benefits you get from a tablet, and this is something to think about as you're using it and maybe it will help you appreciate it a little bit more, is a tablet is, and I mean a Wacom tablet here, is the most ergonomic way to draw. So if you're using paper or you're using Cintiq, you are inevitably going to be kind of bent over. You're going to be hunched over drawing, and with your neck craned forward, which is not over a lifetime is not a healthy position to be in. Whereas with a tablet, you can have a monitor up at eye level, you can have a straight back, you can have your elbow at a nice 90-degree angle, and you can have that tablet on a flat surface. Usually I do end up kind of bending forward anyway and kind of looking at the monitor when I'm using a tablet, but at least you have the option of drawing in a little bit more ergonomically healthy way with a tablet. Okay guys, so that is it for the March Q&A. Thank you for all of your very thoughtful, interesting questions. If you guys have more questions, you can leave them in the comments below. You can message me through a number of different ways: Facebook, Twitter, email, Instagram, and leave me your questions. I mean, some of these questions, I really appreciate them because they end up being the seeds for more kind of long form content. So I really do rely on your questions to bring you better content. Thank you again. If you like this video, please show your appreciation by liking it. Please subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time.